Patrick Mahomes may be the face of the modern NFL quarterback, pulling off what seems like the impossible at times.
Look at the magic of the quarterback, and then throws it, no look.
Lamar Jackson, he's redefined what it means to be a dual-threat signal caller.
Oh, he broke his ankles!
And Tom Brady, his rings speak for themselves. But can you consider any of them one of the top 10 most important quarterbacks to ever play the game? Time to examine the NFL QB tree. It's NFL Explained, Evolution of the Quarterback. This is our tree. It has plenty of fruit, but only 8 branches, 1 tree topper, and just 1 trunk. We're going to use it to guide us through a QB history lesson, if you will, filling the whole tree out to see who the 10 most important, not necessarily the best, but the most important QBs to have ever played the game are, while also seeing who has sprung forth from their respective branches.
Set!
Bleedy! Blue 80!
To say NFL quarterbacks have come a long way since the game's inception is as big an understatement as you can make, especially when you contrast throws like this one.
Oh my, that may be one of the great throws ever made.
To throws like this one, described by some as the worst pass ever made. But back in the day, throws like that weren't really all that terrible. They were just throws.
1906, the forward pass was legalized.
And it's thrown above the shoulder, straight past the eyebrows with the forward point up.
Leading to great growth for the game. It was not an easy ball to throw in that era. It was much more round, fat football.
So, who was responsible for paving the way for guys like Aaron Rodgers and Peyton Manning?
Make room for the new king.
Who is our quarterback tree trunk? You have to go back to 1927, the NFL's 8th year in existence, and the season fans would be introduced to Benny Friedman, who you might consider to be the godfather of the QB position in the NFL.
Dan Marino is pro football's most prolific passer. Steve Young has the highest passer efficiency rating ever. Benny Friedman was pro football's first passer, period.
Friedman was such a big deal that after just 2 seasons in the league, New York Giants owner Tim Mara decided to buy the Detroit Wolverines franchise Friedman played for. That's right, Mara bought the entire franchise just to secure his rights. Sounds crazy, but it paid off. In Friedman's first year as a Giant, he threw for a then unheard of 20 TD passes, a record that stood till 1942.
He really developed an effective throwing motion. He had his arm close to his body, his hand cocked above his ear.
And he even called some plays at the line of scrimmage, which brings us to the first branch on our tree. Playbook masters, because as the passing game grew, so did playbooks. QBs had to evolve. They had to be able to not only memorize hundreds of plays, they had to understand them and know how to execute them in a myriad of situations. The modern term you often hear for this, game manager. But while there have been plenty of those over the years, only a select few could be labeled ultimate game managers. QBs who still had all the physical talents you look for, but who understood their own role within their team's playbook. This is where Hall of Famers like Troy Aikman come into play. He may not have always been the focus of the offense, his Cowboy dynasty fueled by Emmitt Smith's legs. But that's not because Aikman couldn't throw.
He had everything you want in a quarterback. I mean, he had the height, the strength, the intelligence.
He could throw it with velocity, he could throw it with touch. He always threw it with great accuracy.
But he also had an incredible football IQ that allowed him to see the field differently and to understand his own team in a way that others couldn't. His significance to the Dallas dynasty built on more than just his ability to throw the football.
Our huddle was absolute chaos. There's 5 guys in there with big personalities just saying how we should play the rest of the game. It was Michael Irvin, nobody can cover me, and we need to throw the ball more, and then Nate would get on and they can't hold up front, we need to run, we need to start pounding Emmitt. And as soon as Troy walked back into the huddle, you could hear a pin drop.
Hard 2, guys, hard 2.
Aikman may not have put up mind-blowing stats, but he consistently came through big when it mattered the most.
That was beautifully thrown by Troy Aikman. That is not an easy pass to complete.
Fellow Canton resident Len Dawson comes from this branch, Packers legend Bart Starr, Hall of Famer Y.A. Tittle, and then there's the most accomplished QB to ever play the game, sorry Tom Brady, Otto Graham.
No man ever took a team into the final game of the season as many times as he did. They call it the Super Bowl today. In those days it was called the World Championship.
What Otto Graham did is unheard of in any sport. He didn't just win 81% of his games, which is a record that stands to this day. He played professional football from 1946 to 1955, all with the Cleveland Browns, and he took them to the title game every one of those seasons.
Graham throws a fine pass, catches on the 3, and rambles into the end zone for the tally.
He led the league in a slew of passing categories during his career, but what made him truly special was his ability to run Paul Brown's offense, which was the most intricate offense in the game. Brown was a pioneer, an innovator who was coming up with formations no one had ever thought of, let alone seen before. So he had to have a QB capable of not only understanding all the complexities of it, but who could execute the concepts as well.
Otto ran the Browns' offense to perfection and even started to show some signs of what Paul Brown would later create as the West Coast offense.
Otto Graham transforms the interception into a lightning-like strike for a touchdown.
But Graham wasn't the first to run an intricate NFL offense, that distinction belonging to Chicago's Sid Luckman, the first evolutionary branch to spring forth from the Freedman trunk.
Sid Luckman, as a quarterback, was the man who precipitated the T formation. He's the man that made it work.
Luckman was drafted in 1939, and while the T formation was already being run by several teams, Chicago's coach, the legendary George Halas, had worked with the guy often credited as the father of the T formation, Clark Shaughnessy, to modernize it, incorporating lots of fakes, traps, pulls, misdirections, and play action. But he needed the right QB to make it all work, someone with a high IQ, with great footwork, and an arm to make all the throws required. He believed Luckman to be that guy, so he traded for him.
You had to see Sid Luckman play in order to believe how good he was.
Halas's faith in Luckman paid off, the Bears winning 4 titles with Luckman behind center, the pinnacle coming in the 1940 championship game, Luckman running the Bears' T-formation offense to the tune of a never-been-seen before or since 73-0 title win over Washington.
73-0, the largest margin of victory in the history of the National Football League, and it was a great victory for them, and the town sure did celebrate.
Like many on this particular branch, Luckman wasn't a one-trick pony, and as we go, know that many of the QBs who appear on one branch could easily appear on another. Luckman, for example, was considered the best deep passer of his era, but his arm wasn't what he's remembered by. But how QBs used their arms became the next natural step in the evolutionary process. Countless QBs over the decades would make their mark based on their arms. But not just for having a strong arm, it was unique arm mechanics, it was arm angles and arm speed too. Dan Marino's right arm, for example, legendary, and to this day, he's still considered to be the fastest QB on the draw.
Marino, he looks, he fires, Jurgensen again for a touchdown in the middle.
If you want to groom a young quarterback, pull out some Dan Marino tape and watch the mechanics. Dan was literally perfect the way he threw the football.
Threw a rope in one of the more incredible passes I have ever seen.
By the time Marino hung up his cleats, he pretty much owned every passing record that mattered. His arm, in some ways, changed the game.
At a time when most teams were throwing shorter passes, Don Shula changed his offensive philosophy to take advantage of Dan's arm talent.
He's a very important part of that transition from football being a running game to what it is now, the passing league it is.
Running the ball just seemed like a waste of time with 13 taking snaps, and it's a philosophy that many teams have adopted since. And while Marino had a cannon for an arm, what made him really special was that release of his.
Loved watching him throw the football.
Marino will throw it. He pops it. It is caught for a touchdown by Mark Clayton.
Had special velocity, and it just came out so fast. Never seen anything like it as far as that release. I'm not sure we ever will.
It was subtle, but the key to Marino's lightning-quick release was his throwing motion. He had little wind-up, an incredibly tight, compact release, generating power from rare torque in his torso. He didn't arch his back quite as much, and his follow-through was more of a left-to-right motion than the traditional front-to-back. Combined with his arm strength, it made for a lethal combination.
The most prolific and pure passing quarterback that this generation has ever seen.
Phillip Rivers took unique throwing motions to a whole new level years later, utilizing a motion few coaches would allow a Pop Warner quarterback to use, let alone an NFL QB.
Golly!
Prior to Marino, there was Terry Bradshaw, whose nickname, the Blonde Bomber, explains why he ends up on this branch. And then you have Sonny Jurgensen, who might be best remembered for his physique. But make no mistake, he had an arm that was ahead of its time.
When you watched him play, you really felt like you were watching an artist as much as you were watching a quarterback. He always threw a perfect spiral. It was like a feather coming out of the sky.
If you didn't know any better and you saw this guy warming up, you might have thought you had shown up to a semi-pro beer league.
He had a gut, usually, and that caused his shirt tail to kind of come out more than most guys. I mean, he looked more like a guy that was walking up to a bar, getting ready to order a draft.
But Jurgensen's gut was the last thing anyone was talking about after they saw him throw. Receivers said it was almost impossible to drop his passes because of the way the ball came down from the skies into their hands.
Everybody's got a thing about your weight, and I said, you don't throw the ball with your stomach, you throw it with your arm.
And talk about arm angles. He got rid of the ball in every which way imaginable. Think of him as the OG Mahomes.
I threw sidearm, behind my back. I was 2 for 3 left-handed.
He's under center and throws a pass behind his back to Pete Retzlaff.
Jurgensen of the Eagles back. Almost trapped here, and he throws one behind him. Pete Retzlaff got that ball, goes to the 34.
Jurgensen likely learned some tricks of the arm trade from the guy he backed up when he was drafted, Norm Van Brocklin, still the record holder for passing yards in a single game with 554, which he set in 1951.
Norm Van Brocklin has something cooking.
Crazy that no modern quarterback has ever been able to surpass it in this day and age of pass-happy football. But the arm that set the table for everyone else that followed belonged to slinging Sammy Ball.
One passing threat is slinging Sammy Ball, who made history at Texas Christian University.
Sammy Ball was the first big arm quarterback in the National Football League.
Ball pitches once more, this one in the end zone.
Ball is the guy that is most often credited with playing the quarterback position the way we see others play it today. He smashed most of the passing records that were in place at the time, throwing off balance and with different arm angles without sacrificing strength or accuracy.
This guy was a guy who changed football with the way he threw the ball.
Friedman might have come up with the motion, but Ball was the guy who showed its full potential, and it didn't matter what the conditions were like. As a rookie, he led Washington to the title game, played at Wrigley Field in the dead of winter. He led the team to victory, throwing for 335 yards. If he could put up that kind of stat line in the bitter cold and win a championship while doing so, there was no reason not to throw.
Needing a touchdown to win, Ball sends along with Dwayne Milner. He collects it and skims along the frozen turf. And the Redskins win the 1937 World Championship.
Now, you might be screaming, how is the guy with the nickname, the Golden Arm, not on your arm branch? The answer, Johnny Unitas was so much more than just his arm, that he deserves his own branch, which we're calling the prototype, the QB who represented it all. They didn't just have great arms and know how to master a playbook, they could take over play calling duties at any moment.
Be a split right, fullback draw, both of them on right. Ready?
They could make all the throws, and they were mini celebrities. They were the face of more than the franchise, they were the face of the respective cities and states. And in Johnny U's case, he was the face of an entire sport. He was everything you could ever want from the quarterback position.
When you look at his game, you'll see the rhythm passing game, the 5-step drop, the 3-step drop, the pump fake, the hurry-up offense. All these things are the things that he perfected and were copied by every quarterback from that point to this point today.
Baugh may have revolutionized the passing game in football, but Unitas helped revolutionize football as a sport in the United States. He had that arm, of course.
Unitas goes back to throw, fires long, into the end zone, it's complete!
But he was also one of the first QBs to work on chemistry with his star receiver.
You know, these are the kind of routes in the 60s that you didn't see as much in the 50s or certainly in the 40s. Plays like this that were really designed, beat the defense plays.
Before Montana to Rice, it was Unitas to Raymond Berry, a combination that helped lead the Colts to the title in 1958. Baltimore's win over the Giants in OT, dubbed the greatest game ever played, and putting the NFL in position to surpass baseball as America's national pastime.
This is the one, the overtime championship, that everybody points to as this was really the beginning of the National Football League in the modern era.
That win made Unitas a household name across America. His personality and looks made him a media darling, and his play on the field earned him the respect of everyone who played with or against him.
My high school coach let us pick our numbers, and I asked for number 19 because of Johnny Unitas. Yeah, and the cats used to call me Joey U for a while.
I mean, he's the only jersey I've ever purchased in my life.
Unitas was more than just a QB. It was like the Colts had a coach on the field.
I really got the feeling that he, much like Peyton Manning, understood the offense and probably came back and said, we've been running this run all day. Why don't we do a little... You could almost hear it, right?
He read defenses better than anyone ever had, and because of that, he controlled play calling more than any QB ever had. And that set the stage for another Colt who would come along decades later. No one has ever taken over play calling duties quite like Peyton Manning did. And it seemed to work out as he made and won his fair share of Super Bowls while doing it.
He was a coach on the field, and that allowed him to revolutionize the no-huddle and hurry-up offense.
Nice left! Heidi Raiders! Heidi Raiders! He's fake calling now. He's dummy call. Omaha! Omaha! Omaha!
Omaha came to symbolize Manning's genius, and it was his staple call when he audibled at the line. Watching him play, you almost felt bad for his OCs, Manning taking what Unitas did and perfecting it.
When you play against Peyton Manning, you're playing against the quarterback and the game planner and the offensive play caller.
Passing records fell, titles followed, and Manning's popularity grew, and he embraced it, turning out to be a natural in front of the camera. His personality turning out to be the polar opposite of his stoic appearance.
Those are two plays I just caught. This helmet doesn't fit. Shocking that a helmet doesn't fit you.
Which made him the perfect pitchman for products ranging from pizza to insurance, and making him the ultimate face of the franchise. His brother followed in his footsteps, Eli, another high-profile pick who fulfilled his promise, beating Tom Brady for 2 titles. Shortly thereafter, you had Big Ben, Roethlisberger, another 2-time Super Bowl winner who was the complete package in his own right. Before Manning, there was Jim Kelly, another top 10 draft selection QB who played a heavy role in how his offense was run. He was given the keys to Buffalo's K-gun offense. And in between Kelly and Unitas, you have Broadway Joe, one of the most flamboyant and boisterous quarterbacks the NFL has ever seen.
Sometimes they talk about drinking and conniving around with ladies and stuff.
I think we got a heck of a shot of winning.
It seems almost un-American to me for a bachelor not to, go around having a drink with a lady now and then.
We beat anybody in the world, and I think we're going to win next Sunday.
I know we're going to win. I have that attitude. I feel that way. Look at that shot.
Namath's guarantee that New York would upset the Colts in Super Bowl III, and the fact that he pulled it off, cemented his name in NFL lore. But so did the way he carried himself, never one to shy away from a camera, an interview, or a late-night New York party. Namath was almost more than just a football star. He's probably the guy responsible for making it possible to be both a player and a true celebrity.
Who wore white shoes, wore his hair long, and he went his own way. He was Mick Jagger in a football uniform.
Oh, and I like the clothes, too, on occasion. I had a few nice coats and some pants and things. Yeah, I was styling. I was a part of the time, man.
But Namath shouldn't just be judged on his off-field exploits or that guarantee. He was a standout field general as well and had a great arm.
You didn't have to look to see when the ball was released. You could hear it. You could hear the whoosh when the ball left his hand.
And his footwork was just about perfect. His career, though, is still one of those what-could-have-been tales. A string of knee injuries prevented him from ever reaching his full potential. And mobility is where the evolutionary process would head next. It's the MO for modern QBs like Russell Wilson.
On the fake, pressure coming big time. Wilson eludes, Okafor fires. Wide open is Marshawn Lynch.
Russell Wilson is currently the gold standard of a scrambling quarterback.
Wilson has just about perfected the art of the ad-lib. Sure, he has a few seasons where he's put up some hefty rushing numbers, but most of his runs aren't by design. They're the product of a play simply breaking down.
Russell Wilson does the whole Russell Wilson thing.
Few quarterbacks in the game's history have had the ability to extend plays like Danger Russ. He often looks like a kid playing the game in a street, zigzagging his way around defenders before miraculously finding a receiver to throw to.
Cue the circus music. Wilson throwing for Baldwin. Oh my goodness, he caught it!
Are you kidding me? Russell Wilson! He did more pirouettes than a ballerina!
Wilson could easily show up on several of the branches of this tree, from dual threat to backyard bomber, but we're placing him on the Scrambler branch because no one has ever really been better at it than he has.
Unbelievable stuff!
Kyler Murray is the most recent QB to be born from this lineage, Murray sharing many of the same traits as Wilson and using them to pull off the improbable.
7 seconds. 6 seconds. Murray heaves it downfield. It is. Oh, it's caught! It is caught!
Before Wilson, that road was paved by the likes of Donovan McNabb, the Eagles' great, one of the best at eluding pressure with his feet. Steve McNair put himself on the map in 1997 when he led the league in yards per carry, racking up 650 rushing yards from the QB spot. He would go for 300-plus rushing yards for 6 straight seasons from 1997 to 2002. And before McNabb and McNair, there was the lefty, Steve Young, who may have had to wait a bit before taking center stage, but when he finally did, fans couldn't take their eyes off him.
Young comes out of there. Still on his feet is Steve Young, and still.
Young wasn't just significant because of all those crazy highlights he produced. He famously led the 49ers to trade Joe Montana, the winner of 4 Super Bowls and a pure pocket passer. A few other quarterbacks were known for using their legs before Young came along, but Young did something none of them had ever done before, which was using that style of play to win a Super Bowl. Young, though, was not the first ad-libber to make the title game while running around. In fact, this branch is named in honor of one of the most important quarterbacks to ever take a snap in the NFL, Fran Tarkenton.
Fran Tarkenton was really the first model of the mobile quarterback. He would just go all around, run all around, and play in a different way.
I've got to change how this position is played, or we're not going to win a game.
Tarkenton's nicknames, the Scrambler or Mad Scrambler, Scramblin' Fran, or sometimes Frantic Fran, you get the point. No one had seen anyone play the QB position like him. The unexpected was a built-in part of his game, and it helped him lead the Vikings to 3 Super Bowls.
I think greatness is more than just being great yourself. It's being able to make other people great and making a team great. And that was something that Fran Tarkenton did. We have to remember those players that played for a good team but just didn't happen to win the Super Bowl.
Tarkenton had an arm too. He wasn't just mobile, but he used that mobility to buy himself time, and that made him a giant headache for opposing pass rushers. Tark's style of play would set the stage for countless QBs that would follow, and we're not just talking about the dual threat guys that we'll get to in a bit. Because while his branch features QBs who would take off if they couldn't find an open receiver, racking up solid rushing stats along the way, others started using their legs to set up ridiculous throws that used to be reserved for street football games. Quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes, for example, who combined Tark's scrambling abilities with a Bradshaw-like arm and the willingness to take risks, making him the ultimate modern backyard bomber.
I mean, fake jump pass. Let me just go back over here, flip my hips this way, throw it back across the field. I mean, that's like backyard ball. How do you defend that?
Mahomes is the face of the new age QB. He's the new standard. Athleticism, vision, arm strength, and a childlike view of the game that seems to give him a freedom to try things other QBs wouldn't dare.
Look at this guy, Von Miller on his heels. He throws it left-handed.
His game is a direct descendant of Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers, another signal caller who seems to defy logic when you see what he's able to pull off.
Rodgers in trouble.
It's going to get there.
He turned 32 yesterday. Does he have a vintage moment in him? In the end zone, it is caught for the win!
The way Rodgers plays, you'd think he was the understudy of another backyard bomber. And he was, as he followed in the footsteps of Brett Favre, who had a rocket arm and zero fear when it came to using it.
Favre fakes the handoff, rolling right, pressured by McDaniel, shovels it forward, touchdown!
He was risky. I mean, he was fun to watch because you never knew what he would do.
Few QBs had as much fun playing the game as Favre did. He seemed to be smiling no matter what the circumstances.
I don't know why we come out so early and just stand around here and do this. Hey, you got any left-handed footballs? I'm sitting here just goofing off.
And he was ready to flash that grin at the opposition as often as he would to his own teammates.
Who hit me? Somebody hit it harder than that. I didn't hit you, dog. Why would you hit me? I thought you hit harder than that.
But you'd smile a lot too if you could pull off the kinds of plays he regularly did.
What a play by Brett Favre. He shoveled the ball forward as he was going down.
When Favre was growing up, he undoubtedly saw a lot of John Elway. Elway often using his legs to set up ridiculous across-the-body throws only made possible because he could throw the ball a country mile.
How many quarterbacks do you think can do that? That's not an arm, that's a gun. You got to have a permit to carry that thing.
Kenny Stabler is another QB to come from this branch, but all these guys owe a little something from their game to Dallas Cowboys great Roger Staubach.
Staubach looks like he might take off. Got away from one, got away twice.
Roger, you are something else.
From as far back as I can remember, I've wanted to be Roger Staubach. I was going to run around and make a last-second throw just like he had done.
You're not going to find too many mind-boggling stats on Staubach's resume, but remember, he missed 5 years of his prime playing years while serving in the Navy. One of his nicknames, Roger the Dodger, based on his ability to duck out of the way of oncoming pass rushers.
On third downs, I used to stand next to Coach Landry because I held for extra points and field goals. Roger would drop back and he'd start to run, and Coach Landry would go, "No, Roger, no," and then he'd go, Roger.
But his mobility was made that much more dangerous because of what he could do with his arm as well. Staubach putting his signature on the most famous deep pass play there is in football. Dallas was down 14-10 to the Vikings in the NFC divisional game until Staubach found Drew Pearson on what is now one of the most iconic pass plays in the game's history.
I just said, well, I closed my eyes and said Hail Mary.
Roger, he's going long. Down the near sideline for Drew Pearson. Pearson makes the catch at the 5, touchdown!
Not every quarterback relies on mobility or even having the strongest of arms. QBs like Drew Brees were able to put up Hall of Fame-worthy numbers by relying on rare, pinpoint accuracy.
Over 76,000 yards, and now 540 touchdowns. Drew Brees, take a bow.
Brees led the league in completion percentage 6 times and regularly completed close to 70% of his passes throughout his career, finishing with an overall completion percentage of 67.7.
Boy, and how great has Drew Brees been? His accuracy has been amazing this year.
He hit on plenty of deep passes overall, but it was his vision and decision-making that made him so special.
Hitches, throws down the seam, touchdown!
Kurt Warner comes from this branch as well. He led the league in completion percentage 3 straight years, and it was during that run that he went to 2 Super Bowls, winning one of them. But the quarterback best known for running a system built around being accurate, none other than Joe Montana, who perfected Bill Walsh's West Coast offense.
He made it look easy. And I know it's not easy. Yeah. Believe me, I know it's not easy. It's far from easy. And I ran that offense. But his footwork, his timing, his accuracy, There was never a double clutch. It was just always in rhythm.
Montana led the league in completion percentage 5 times, and 2 of the seasons he did it, the 49ers won the whole thing. Walsh's West Coast offense was built around short, horizontal routes that acted as sort of jabs that set up the big roundhouse that would come later. Montana's ability to consistently hit Jerry Rice on all those slants was essential to keeping defenses on their heels.
Short passing game, replicating the efficiency and the security of a running game, that's what changed things. And so defenses couldn't respond.
Montana looking for the quick throw. Throws, completes it to Rice.
The ball was coming out so much faster than it happened in the past in the passing game. The defenses, it did take 15, 20 years to catch up.
Walsh, though, didn't come up with his famed approach for the 49ers and Montana. He did it a decade earlier with the Bengals when he was their OC. And the QB who first executed his new offensive concept was Virgil Carter.
It was high percentage throwing, lay the ball off short, let the receiver make the total yardage, the run after the catch.
Here's the thing, though. Walsh didn't come up with the West Coast offense because he thought it was a superior way of moving the ball. It was mostly out of necessity. On paper, it worked. Carter led the league in completion percentage in 1971.
We began to control the ball through the short pass, always looking for the big play, but going then to the short pass. We won the division championship in Cincinnati with Virgil as our quarterback.
But that same year, the Bengals drafted another quarterback who had a stronger arm. So Walsh and the Bengals got to see what his philosophy looked like with Ken Anderson at the wheel. Walsh's offense evolved once Anderson took over because he was able to make some throws Carter was not.
If you look at his 1974 and 1975 seasons,
looks, fires into the end zone, touchdown.
They're some of the best seasons of all time. He was completing 62% of his passes at a time when the NFL average was 52%.
Anderson led the league in completion percentage 3 times, hitting on 70% of his passes in 1982, which was an NFL record at the time, broken later by Brees.
Ken Anderson was a pioneer.
Anderson back to throw, looks, fires into the end zone, touchdown.
I don't know if that means he's a Hall of Famer, but I think it means he shouldn't be forgotten.
He took the Bengals to the Super Bowl too, ironically losing to Walsh and Montana. Prior to that meeting, though, Walsh left Cincinnati and landed in San Diego first, Dan Fouts being the next recipient of Walsh's principles under the Chargers' Air Coryell attack.
Fouts pump fakes, throws, touchdown, Kellen Winslow.
Now let's move on to our Barrier Buster branch, this group as important as any on the tree because it opened the door to minorities being allowed to play the position, which wasn't always the case.
Coaches, most of whom are white, seem to believe that blacks are superior athletes but inferior thinkers.
Like that's just what the stigma was to the league at the time. I mean, now we look at it and say, that's so stupid, that's so ridiculous, but back then it was reality.
Before an African American was tabbed as a starting quarterback, you had Tom Flores, who in 1960 became the first Latino to ever start at QB in the NFL.
Flores uncorks his 9th scoring toss of the season as he spears Clem Daniels with a 34-yard touchdown bomb.
Then there was Marlon Briscoe, who came along in 1968.
Let's go, Marlon!
Briscoe, the first black QB to start a game at the professional level in the modern era. October 6, 1968, the Broncos playing in the AFL gave Briscoe the starting nod against the Bengals, Briscoe winning that game by a score of 10-7.
The impact was that I proved that a black man could think, throw, and lead on a National Football League level.
Now, he only got the start because Denver's regular starter was hurt, but Briscoe came back to start 4 more games later that season and ended up throwing 14 TDs in his 5 starts.
As time progressed, in fact, in 1969, the very next year, there were 4 quarterbacks drafted, 4 black quarterbacks drafted as quarterbacks.
The NFL, though, still hadn't seen a black QB make a start in decades, a streak that came to an end when James Harris was tabbed the starter for the Bills in 1971 after the AFL and NFL merged. Harris's first start for the Bills actually took place in 1969, but again, that was pre-merger, so technically it was for an AFL team, not an NFL team. so the game he played in 2 years later carries more historical significance. Harris would eventually get traded to the Rams, who made him their full-time starter in 1974. Harris threw 11 TDs against just 6 interceptions and made the Pro Bowl, the first black QB to ever accomplish that feat.
Harris dropping back to pass, throws toward the end zone, man open. Touchdown, Los Angeles.
I really followed the history of the game. There were guys that made me think, okay, if these guys can play in the National Football League, maybe there's a chance for me to play one day because they're getting their opportunity.
Briscoe and Harris helped open the door for other black quarterbacks, but 2 others specifically really helped put an end to the stereotype that black quarterbacks weren't smart enough to lead a team to victory consistently. First came Doug Williams, who was the first African-American QB to win a Super Bowl.
Play action fake. Williams going up top. Got Sanders on the fly at midfield. He's gone.
You're watching history. This is history in the making.
The best moment to me on that game is when they announced the MVP.
Most valuable player of Super Bowl 22 is quarterback Doug Williams of the Washington Redskins. The first black quarterback to start a Super Bowl, the first black quarterback to win a Super Bowl. I tell you what, I hope Doug Williams does. I hope he puts to bed once and for all about the black athlete in professional football.
If I had no played enough down to football after that, it was fine with me because as Martin Luther King say, the mountaintop. I had been there, at the top of the mountain in the profession that I was playing. That was football.
Williams, though, wasn't the regular starter when he won that title. He only got the chance to make history because Jay Schrader got hurt. So there was still a stigma that a black QB couldn't do what a white QB could do. And then along came Warren Moon.
Warren Moon turned the tide with his performance, and I think he was the one that separated the black quarterback being named black quarterback and being named a quarterback.
By the time Moon's career was over, the absurdity that a black QB couldn't master a playbook or read a defense was rendered obsolete. Moon's arm was electric, his vision as good as anyone had ever seen, the yards piled up, the TD passes piled up.
Warren Moon not afraid to challenge those defensive backs.
And so did all the Pro Bowl nods. He made 8 straight at one point, cementing himself as one of the best in the game. And once and for all, changing the perception many GMs and coaches had about black quarterbacks.
Warren Moon paved the way, man.
Number one, uno!
And it's not said enough.
But if you're looking for the king barrier buster, you have to go all the way back to the league's first year in existence, because the NFL did allow black players in the league when it started in 1920, making Fritz Pollard the first black quarterback to ever take snaps in the NFL.
He could throw the ball almost as well as anybody in the very, very infancy of pro football.
The QB position wasn't utilized in 1920 the way it is today, and by 1927, the league no longer allowed African Americans to play on teams at all. So Pollard didn't exactly open the door for Briscoe and others who would follow. But what Pollard had to endure was far worse. He was playing in an era when racism was accepted by a large portion of society.
1921, there were 59 African Americans lynched in this country. So when you put that in perspective, Jim Crow was at its highest at that particular time. To imagine what he went through during that time, where he had to sleep, where he had to eat, just in terms of traveling around with his football team and enduring all that is something special.
His story has only recently started to receive the credit it deserves, and it would be an oversight not to acknowledge his place in NFL history. Those barrier busters created opportunity and would ultimately set the stage for QBs to take what Tarkenton did and Staubach did to an entirely new level. Cue the emergence of the true dual-threat QB, guys like Lamar Jackson, who almost gives his team a 12th player to work with because when he's out there, it's like the team has an extra running back.
Fakes the inside handoff, keeps it, weaves to the 2, he's in, touchdown, Lamar Jackson.
You might be thinking, what's the difference between scrambler and dual threat? Sure, Jackson scrambles around plenty, but he's so electric with the ball in his hands, the Ravens changed their entire offensive approach to maximize what he can do. The true dual-threat guys don't just run when a play breaks down, they run because the playbook calls for them to do it.
You inspire me, cuz.
Jackson's arrival comes on the heels of QBs like Colin Kaepernick, who used his legs to take the Niners to a Super Bowl while he was at the helm. There's Cam Newton, of course, who also has a Super Bowl appearance and an MVP under his belt, along with a record-breaking number of rushing touchdowns. And then there is Michael Vick, who seemed more like a human highlight machine than he did a quarterback.
Vick in trouble, escapes, still on the run, looks for the change, and he'll pick up the first down on 4th and 15.
Did you see that? Wow.
You know how explosive he was, and you know how he carried himself.
Ball till you fall, baby, one play at a time. Don't think too far forward and never look back.
He was just different out there, you know, he was so fast and running through people, like splitting people, stuff like that. It's like, man, I gotta do that.
It means a lot for guys to want to emulate my game in every way. You know, when you're playing the game, you don't know that you're revolutionizing the position. You don't know that you're changing the game for the better.
Prior to Vick, the league was treated to a number of seasons of Slash, Cordell Stewart, wowing Pittsburgh fans in the late 90s and early 2000s. But the quarterback who really took what Tarkenton started to a whole new level, Philadelphia's Randall Cunningham.
Look at that agility. Ladies and gentlemen, Randall Cunningham is a ready for prime time player.
From 1986 to 1992, there were few players in the league more exciting than Cunningham. He was piling up 500-plus rushing yards from the QB spot during those years, coming oh so close to a 1,000-yard season in 1990.
I think in today's game, it would have been amazing. I don't know if you could have stopped this guy. I really don't think you could. He could flat run.
He is the quarterback who planted the seed that would eventually bloom the Vick and Lamar flowers that would spring up years later. His play gave future head coaches and OCs the confidence that you could think outside the offensive box and develop offensive game plans that suited the player you had at the position instead of trying to make the player adapt to your system. Cunningham had an arm, too. In later years, he backed off running as much. His 1998 season often gets overshadowed by his rushing abilities, but he led the Vikings to a 15-1 record that year and was named first-team All-Pro on the back of his league-leading 38 TD passes. And that brings us to the tree topper. Tom Brady isn't the fastest, he doesn't have the strongest arm the game has ever seen, he just happens to have played the position better than anyone in the game's history.
Championship play right here, fellas.
And doing it longer than anyone could have ever imagined.
You're number one in the world and it'll always be.
Brady has been whatever his team needed him to be. He was the playbook master in his early years when the Patriots dynasty got going.
Boy, when you thought you'd seen it all!
Then he showcased his arm in later years, putting up all kinds of record-breaking stats in the process.
And Brady has just done something this league has not seen before.
And to top it all off, he showed he's the one QB who could even defeat Father Time, not just making a Super Bowl at age 43, but winning it on a new team while throwing 40 TDs in the process.
You're a legend, man. Congrats, man.
Tom Brady seems to have made a deal with the devil because he's not getting old. Every other quarterback got old.
You're too old! You're too old!
Simply put, Brady has set the QB bar. His career is the one all other QBs will be measured against going forward.
You'll never see another one like this one.
But what will the next evolutionary branch look like? Could we see a 6'9" signal caller with Lamar's speed and Mahomes' arm?
You can kiss him goodbye!
Will there ever be a truly ambidextrous quarterback, someone who can throw equally well, right or left-handed? Is it going to be a QB who designs his own plays, truly becoming the first ever QB OC? Time will tell. Now, undoubtedly, you're going to want to move some of the fruit on this tree around, and that's the point of this exercise. Maybe someone was left off, but have fun with it. Create your own tree. Move QBs to different branches. But for now, our tree is built upon the arms, legs, and brains of these 10 legends: Benny Friedman, Sid Luckman, Sammy Ball, Johnny Unitas, Fran Tarkenton, Roger Staubach, Fritz Pollard, Virgil Carter, Randall Cunningham, and Tom Brady, the 10 most important QBs to have ever played the game, breaking ground in their own unique ways, allowing others to follow and perfect what they started.